In July we were vacationing at a dacha in one of the settlements. We have a small plot there. There is a well on the plot, one for two, with a 57-year-old neighbor John, a childless widower. We decided to clean out the well. Toward evening we started lifting gravel. At the bottom of one of the buckets we found a small photo ceramic, the kind they usually put on monuments. She was wearing a woman in her 30s with long dark hair and a very pretty face. I wondered how she could have gotten into the well, and not coming to a definite conclusion, I just threw it away with the rest of the junk. But the neighbor was much more interested in her. He explained to me that it shouldn't be treated like that and took it for himself. I didn't object. The next morning his legs were paralyzed. He was taken by ambulance to the hospital. A month later he returned home. As it turned out, there was no one to take care of the disabled man. So my wife and I decided to help John by cooking and taking care of the house. One day my wife came to see him. Going into the kitchen, she heard a voice from the room. When she came closer, she saw that the old man was talking to a photograph. He made big pauses between phrases, nodded his head, as if listening to the answer. After a while I noticed it myself. It was the same photo ceramic. When I asked what was going on with him, he rudely replied that it was none of my business. After that incident, whenever we went to visit him, the neighbor hid the picture. He's completely crazy, I thought. But I kept helping him. And in conversation he began to mention more and more often that he was going to marry some Nora, that she was coming back from somewhere far away. And when I asked him about Nora, he was evasive, if not silent. The man who had been so uncommunicative up to that point became more and more withdrawn. One day I went to his house late at night. Before I knocked, I heard a loud woman's laughter. Then I knocked. After a minute or two, the door was opened by a satisfied, smiling neighbor and said,
"What a pity you and Nora didn't meet, she just came out."
It's worth noting that the neighbor doesn't have his own exit to the road. To get out, you have to cross my property, where a large guard dog named Jack sits by the fence. After that I forgot why I had come. When I got home, I told my wife about it. She grinned and said that my grandfather had infected me with schizophrenia. It had been a rough night. There was a thunderstorm, but no rain, and a strong wind was blowing. Jack's chain was jingling loudly, he was howling hard, and so I couldn't sleep for a long time. The morning was overcast. As I went out on the porch to smoke, I noticed that the dog was nowhere to be seen. I called out to him, but there was no response. I looked into the booth and saw Jack dead with a strand of long black hair in his mouth. I went to my neighbor to see if he had heard anything. I knocked, but no one answered. I knocked for another 5 minutes, thinking he was asleep. I couldn't stand it any longer, so I took the spare keys that were hidden in his bathhouse. When I opened the door and entered the room, I saw my neighbor sitting in an old armchair, dressed in a dress suit. There was an open bottle of wine and 2 glasses on the table. The neighbor showed no signs of life. When I felt his pulse, I was convinced he was dead. I called an ambulance, which stated death by suffocation, mechanical asphyxiation. When the police searched his house, they discovered that the very photograph he had treasured was missing.